Look at the next page. We see problem number 7. So we're going to look at this problem and see what we can do to solve. So we see tan x is part of both terms. So we're going to factor that out. We'll have tan x times sine x minus 1 equals 0. So we have this factor and we have this factor. We can set both equal to 0 and solve. So we have tan x equals 0. And we have sine x minus 1 equals 0. Over here, we asked ourselves, when we spin around the circle one time, where will we have tan value of 0? So let's see. Right here we have 1, 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 0, 0, negative 1. So if tangent is sine over cosine, we know right in here, 0 over 1 is 0. So check. We know right here, 1 over 0 is undefined or error. So at pi over 2, we have error. Then over here at 180, 0 over negative 1 is 0. Down here, negative 1 over 0 is error, so 270 is out. Our answer then, we would say, is 0 and 180 degrees, or 0 and pi. Then when we look at sine x minus 1, if we add 1 to both sides, we ask ourselves as we spin around, where is sine 1? So we have 1, 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 0, 0, negative 1. Sine is 1 at pi over 2, or 90 degrees. Now we're asked if there are any extraneous solutions. And we got 0, 180, and 90 as our answers between those two factors. So we said, okay, the answers are 0, 180 for tan, and then we said 90 or pi over 2 for the sine x minus 1. But we have to cancel out the 90 degrees, because even though that works for sine, for tangent, we said that at 90 degrees tan was undefined. So if we were to go and plug 90 degrees back into the original equation, we would have tan of 90 degrees times sine of 90 degrees minus tan of 90 degrees equals 0, and we would get error, right? If you plugged in 0, for example, tan of 0 times sine 0 minus tan 0, and simplified, we would get 0. So our solutions for this problem, we would say x is 0 and 180. Those are the only two solutions. 90 was extraneous. Let's look at problem number 8. So for number 8, I see a quadratic. I see sine squared sine and negative 7, a constant. There's no GCF. I'm going to write this as 10x squared minus 12x minus 7 equals 0. I can't factor this. So if you can't factor something, you can use the quadratic formula. If we plug into the quadratic formula, we get x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. When we simplify this, we end up with x equals 12 plus or minus the square root of 424 over 20. Now this is an irrational number, so when we put this in our calculator, we get sine x, right? This is really sine x. And because this is 10 sine squared sine x. Okay, so we solve quadratic formula. 12 plus square root 424 divided by 2 and 12 minus square root 424 divided by 2. And our two values are approximately 1.63 and approximately negative 0.43. Now, if we put in our calculator inverse sine of 1.63, our calculator says error, right? Because when you spin around the unit circle, you will never have an angle where sine value is more than 1. When we put this in our calculator, we get about negative 25 degrees. Now, because we want our answer to be positive between 0 and 360, we want to rotate this way. We want to figure out what the positive values are. So we know that negative 25 degrees is right about there. So if this is a 25-degree sliver, then this is a 65. So then this would be a 65. This would be 25. This would be 25. This would be 65. This would be 65. And this would be 25. So if this is the spot where negative 0.43 sine, inverse sine negative 0.43 is about negative 25 degrees. So let's see. So if I look at this and say all students take calc, I'll have sine value that's negative in the 4th quadrant and in the 3rd quadrant. So this spot right here in 3rd quadrant is 180 plus 25, which is 205 degrees. And then this spot right here is 270 plus 65. 270 plus 65. So we get 335 degrees. So those are our two answers. Okay, the last one. So for this one, we're going to isolate sine 2x. Notice it doesn't say sine x, okay? So we have 2 sine 2x equals positive root 3. We divide by 2, so we have sine 2x equals root 3 over 2. Now right now we're going to pretend that this says sine x. But this really means that we're looking at a multiple angle. So we need to consider a new range. But let's spin around and see where sine would be root 3 over 2. So all students take calc. Sine will be positive root 3 over 2 here in 1st quadrant and in 2nd quadrant. We know that sine's going to be positive root 3 over 2 at 60 degrees. If that's 30, that's 30. So this is 90 plus 30, which is 120. So at 120 degrees and at 60 degrees, we're going to have sine value of root 3 over 2. Now, what we want to do is, because we're talking about a double angle, we need to double this. So we're really going to be looking at values from 0 to 720. We have to have a new range because of the multiple angle. So if we spin around one time 360 degrees, we hit sine value of root 3 over 2 at 60 and 120. But then if we loop around again, right, if we do one more loop, let's see, we'd have 360 plus 60. So we'd have 360 plus 60, right? We started at 60. We know that's where we'll have sine value of root 3 over 2, but we have to do that second revolution. And then we also would have 120. That's where sine is root 3 over 2, but we have to have that extra spin. So, my pen. So we'll have 420 and 480. My pen is not reading. So 420 and 480. So that's if we add another 360, right? Because we're spinning around 2 times. So if we spin around again, that's where we'll land at the 60-degree spot and the 120-degree spot. What we're going to do now is say 2x instead of x equals 120, 2x equals 60, 2x equals 420, and 2x equals 480. And then when we divide all of those by 2, we'll get x equals 60, x equals 30, x equals 210, and x equals 240. So basically solve, pretend it says sine x equals root 3 over 2. So you spin around and you get those values. X equals whatever answer, right? Like 60 degrees. Then you had to add another 360 to those values. But those answers that you said were really set equal to x. And it said beside sine, it said 2x. So then you set 2x equal to those values where you saw sine root 3 over 2. And you have to divide everything by 2. So your final answers are 60 degrees, 30 degrees, 210, and 240.